Two men attacked a black maid in a mansion. 20 seconds later, they learned she was an army. The late afternoon sun poured through the high windows of the mansion, gilding the furniture and tapestries in a glow of wealth. Yet for Selina, the black maid in her pressed black dress, ruffled white apron, and the stiff white cap perched on her hair, this glow meant nothing. She wasn't part of the luxury. She was part of the background, as invisible as the polish she spread on the mahogany tables each morning. "Selina, hurry with those cups," snapped Mrs. Carmichael, waving a jeweled hand as if swatting a fly. She was seated elegantly on the velvet sofa, her diamond necklace catching the light. "The guests are waiting." "You're always so slow." Selina lowered her eyes, lips pressed tight, and placed the porcelain cups on the tray. Slow. She had been on her feet since dawn, cleaning every room, ironing uniforms, preparing meals. But in this house, nothing she did was ever enough. "Honestly, Margaret," muttered Mr. Carmichael, leaning back in his dark green suit. "These girls are hired help, not artists. If a teacup wobbles, it wobbles. Why expect more?" His tone was dismissive, almost amused, as if Selina and the other maids weren't even standing a few feet away. The other maids, two younger women in identical black and white uniforms, kept their eyes down, following Selina's lead. They had learned early. The less they reacted, the safer they were. Selina set the tray on the polished table, shoulders straight, despite the sting of their words. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She had been trained long ago in places far harsher than this mansion, not to let words rattle her. Still, a knot tightened in her chest. They called her the help, as if that was all she was. None of them knew nor cared that she had once worn a different uniform, one that demanded discipline, sacrifice, and courage. "Careful with that sugar bowl," Mrs. Carmichael scolded again. "That piece is worth more than your monthly wage. Don't chip it." Selina's hand paused for a fraction of a second. She wanted to say, "And my life is worth more than all your silver and porcelain." But she didn't. Instead, she gave a small nod, as if agreeing with the insult, and continued her work. The guests on the sofa chuckled quietly, sipping their wine. A young woman in a gray cardigan whispered something to the man beside her, who smirked and glanced at Selina. She caught the look. It wasn't kindness. It was the same look people gave her often, one of superiority, of a belief that she didn't belong in the same air as them. Selina's chest rose and fell. She pressed her palms flat against the tray to steady herself. Anger burned beneath the surface, but she had learned to bury it deep. She had once stood in deserts and jungles where bullets had cut through silence and men screamed orders into radios. She had endured hunger, exhaustion, terror, and yet here in this grand mansion. What she endured was quieter, crueler invisibility. "Selina," Mrs. Carmichael's sharp voice cut through her thoughts again, stopped standing there like a statue. "Bring the biscuits." "Yes, ma'am," Selina replied softly, and moved toward the kitchen. Her voice was even steady. She knew better than to let it crack. The other maids followed her with their eyes, silently admiring her composure. Selina was older than them, her posture firm, her movements precise. They often whispered among themselves that she carried herself differently, like she had known another kind of life before this one. But they didn't dare ask. In the kitchen, Selina leaned against the counter for just a moment, her breath catching. She stared at her reflection in the polished kettle. Strong cheekbones, tired eyes. She had promised herself not to break here, not to show these people anything real. She was here to work, to survive. She carried the tray of biscuits back into the lounge. Laughter rippled through the room, though she wasn't part of it. To them, she was an accessory, like the chandelier above their heads. Mr. Carmichael, swirling his glass, said to his guest, "The trick is to keep them busy. If they're idle, they get lazy. Isn't that right, Selina?" He didn't even look at her as he spoke, but the smirk on his lips was deliberate. Selina placed the biscuits down and replied, calm as stone, "I do my duties, sir." The room grew quiet for half a breath. Surprised she had said even that. Mrs. Carmichael's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, girl. You are here to serve, not to speak." Selina's jaw clenched, but she lowered her gaze. She wasn't here to challenge them. She wasn't here to remind them that beneath this uniform was someone who had once commanded respect. She was trained to fight, to lead, to survive in deserts where heat scorched lungs and jungles where shadows hid death. Years in uniform had hardened her body, but the war had carved wounds inside. No metal could heal. When she returned, the world had no place for her courage. The army left her with discipline, but no steady future. This job, scrubbing floors and serving tea, wasn't dignity, but it was survival. In the mansion's silence, she traded pride for shelter, wearing an apron instead of armor, knowing no one here would ever see the soldier she had been. And then, two figures in dark clothing burst into the room, faces masked, movements sharp. One raised a gun, pointing it directly at the guests. The room froze. The two intruders stormed inside. One in a black cap and mask, the other in a navy hood pulled tight over his face. The taller man waved his pistol at the wealthy guests, barking, "Hands up! Nobody moves and nobody gets hurt." Screams erupted. Mrs. Carmichael clutched her pearls, trembling. Mr. Carmichael raised his hands, muttering, "Please take what you want. Just don't harm us." The second man shoved past the maids, his gloved hand grabbing Selina's arm roughly. "You get on the ground," he snarled, trying to push her down like she was nothing. Selina's eyes darkened. She steadied herself, the uniform on her back hiding the storm that burned inside. For months, she had been dismissed, looked down on, treated as invisible. And now these men thought she was the weakest in the room. The taller intruder sneered, pointing his gun toward the sofa. "Tie them all up. Start with the help. They're useless anyway." The word hit Selina like a spark. Useless. That's what the Carmichaels always called her in different ways. But useless people don't learn to march through war zones. Useless people don't learn how to disarm men twice their size. She stayed still for a moment, letting the man's grip tighten, letting him believe she was submissive. The other maids whimpered, their bodies pressed against the wall. The guests whispered frantically, "Do what they say, Selina." Mrs. Carmichael hissed, fear twisting her face. For the first time, her voice wasn't sharp with command. It was trembling with desperation. Selina turned her head slightly, eyes locked on the masked man holding her, and then, without warning, she moved. Her elbow slammed upward into his jaw with a sickening crack. The man stumbled back, dazed. Gasps filled the room. In a single motion, she snatched the wrist that held the weapon and twisted hard. The gun clattered onto the rug. "What the?" The taller intruder shouted, aiming his weapon at her. Selina's body dropped low in a trained maneuver, flipping the first man over her hip and slamming him against the table. Dishes shattered. The sound echoed like thunder in the stunned silence. "You picked the wrong house," Selina hissed under her breath. The taller man fired, but Selina was already moving. She ducked behind a chair, then lunged forward, slamming it into his legs. He stumbled, losing balance. In seconds, she was on him, her hand gripping his gun, twisting his fingers back until he cried out in pain. The guests sat frozen, mouths open in disbelief. The same maid they had mocked, ignored, ordered around was now dismantling armed men with precision. The second intruder tried to rise, blood dripping from his nose. Selina turned sharply, kicking the weapon away before he could grab it. Her voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. The voice of someone who had once led squads into battle. "Stay down." Even the Carmichaels obeyed, their eyes wide, breaths shallow. The taller attacker snarled, trying to push her off. "Who the hell are you?" Selina's grip tightened on his arm, her knee pressing against his chest. "Someone you should have never underestimated." He groaned, finally stilling beneath her weight. The second man crawled toward the door, but Selina's boot pinned him down. Her movements were fast, efficient, no hesitation, no fear. For a moment, the room was silent again, except for the ragged breathing of the two defeated intruders. Selina stood tall, her apron torn, her chest rising and falling with adrenaline. She looked nothing like the quiet servant who had been scolded only minutes before. She looked like what she truly was, a soldier. The other maids stared, eyes wide with awe. One whispered, "She saved us." Mrs. Carmichael trembled, clutching her necklace. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she couldn't summon a command. Mr. Carmichael swallowed hard, his arrogance gone. "Selina, I save it," Selina said sharply, cutting him off. Her voice was steady, cold. "All this time you treated me like I was nothing. But today you owe your lives to the one you called the help." The police sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors had called when they heard the gunshot. Selina stepped back, keeping her eyes on the intruders until the sound of boots stormed into the hallway. Officers flooded in, weapons raised, then stopped short at the scene, a maid standing tall, two armed criminals pinned beneath her. The police cuffed the men swiftly, dragging them out. One officer glanced at Selina with respect. "You handled yourself like a pro." "Military." Selina gave a faint nod. "Once." The officer's eyes lingered, impressed. Well, once always, the Carmichael sat speechless. The guests murmured in shock. Selina adjusted her torn apron, her eyes hard. She had revealed only a glimpse of who she really was. But it was enough. For months, they had seen only a maid. But today, in less than 20 seconds, she had shown them a soldier, and they would never forget it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.